Jake's small apartment was quiet that morning. The kind of quiet that made him think the world outside had stopped moving. The rain had been falling all night, tapping gently against the glass window beside his bed. He stretched, groaned, and swung his legs over the side, still half asleep. That was when he heard the faint sound of something shifting. It wasn't the creak of the floorboards, not the hum of the fridge. It was the sound of soft bare feet moving across his kitchen tiles. Jake froze, his heart thudding once, twice, hard in his chest. No one else had a key to his apartment. Slowly, he stood and stepped toward the kitchen. The hallway light was dim, the air cool, and there, standing by his kitchen counter, was the strangest sight Jake had ever seen. She couldn't have been more than 4 feet tall. Her skin was a pale silver blue, glowing faintly as if moonlight lived beneath it. Her eyes, huge, bright, almost too big for her small face, looked straight into his. They shimmered like pools of liquid gold. She was holding his tablet, scrolling through screens without touching it. When her gaze locked on him, Jake felt a strange pull in his chest. He wanted to step forward, to speak, but his body refused to obey his mind. The girl tilted her head slightly, her lips curving into a small smile. "You're awake," she said in a voice soft enough to be mistaken for a whisper in the wind. Her words were accented, unfamiliar. "You know me?" Jake managed to ask, though his voice came out rough. "I know you better than you think," she replied, setting the tablet down without breaking eye contact. Jake blinked rapidly, trying to shake off the strange feeling spreading through his limbs. It was like invisible strings were tied to his arms, his legs, even his thoughts, and she was the one holding them. She took a step toward him, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. "Pour me some water," she said gently. Before Jake could question it, his feet moved toward the counter, his hands reaching for a glass. He poured the water, placed it in front of her. Only then did his mind catch up. "Wait, what the hell just happened?" he demanded. "You obeyed." She answered simply, taking a sip. The water trembled slightly in her small hands, but her eyes stayed locked on him. Jake stepped back, his breathing quick. "This is some kind of trick," he said. She shook her head slowly. "No trick, human, only the bond." Jake swallowed hard, unsure if he was dealing with a lost child, a strange intruder, or something far more dangerous. Her delicate frame didn't look threatening, but the control she had over him was undeniable. "Who are you?" he asked again. "My name is Lyra," she said, "and now you are mine." The way she said it calm, certain, as if stating the weather made a chill run through him. Before Jake could respond, she glanced toward the window. Her expression shifted from calm to alert in an instant. "They found me," she whispered. Her eyes brightened, and Jake felt the strange invisible strings tighten. "Move," she ordered, against his will. Jake grabbed his jacket, keys, and followed her toward the door. Rain splashed against his face as they stepped outside. He didn't even lock the door behind them. They ran down the narrow alley beside the building. Jake's mind was screaming for answers, but his body just kept moving. "Stop, tell me what's going on," he demanded. "Later," Lyra said, her voice urgent but steady. Right then, a shadow passed over them. Jake looked up and saw the silhouette of something not human moving on the rooftop. It was tall, broad-shouldered, carrying a weapon that glinted under the streetlights. The figure stopped, its glowing visor scanning the alley. Lyra's small hand clamped around Jake's wrist. "Don't look at them," she murmured, "or you'll be dead before the rain stops." Jake's pulse hammered as they slipped into another side street. He had no idea who was chasing them, or why this tiny alien girl had appeared in his kitchen. But the way she moved, quick, purposeful, told him she had done this before. This wasn't a random intrusion. He was part of something now, whether he wanted to be or not. Finally, they stopped under a flickering street lamp. Lyra released his wrist, her chest rising and falling fast. "You will listen to me," she said quietly, "because if you don't, neither of us will live through the night." Jake opened his mouth to argue, but then he heard it. Footsteps. Heavy and fast, coming from the direction they had just escaped. Lyra's eyes flared gold again, and Jake felt his body tense. Ready to run. This is just the beginning, she whispered, and in that moment, Jake knew his life was no longer his own. The rain didn't slow them down. Lyra's small figure moved ahead of Jake like she knew every turn, every shadow to hide in. Her bare feet splashed silently through puddles, leaving almost no sound behind. Jake tried to fight the strange pull that made him follow, but each time her golden eyes glanced back, his body obeyed without question. It was terrifying, like being a passenger inside his own skin. When they finally stopped, they were inside a narrow, half-collapsed storage shed at the edge of an old market district. The walls leaked water, and the air smelled of rust and damp. Cardboard. Lyra pressed her back against the wall, her breathing quick but steady. She watched the entrance as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. "Start talking," Jake said, his voice low but firm. "What are you? What did you do to me?" Lyra's gaze flicked to his face, and for a brief second, he felt his muscles tighten again. But this time she didn't push. "You are linked," she said simply. "I saw you and my eyes chose you." Jake stared at her, trying to understand. "Your eyes chose me? What does that even mean?" Lyra tilted her head, almost as if she was studying him like a puzzle. "My kind can survive in dangerous places because we bond with a single host," she explained. "That host protects us, feeds us, helps us escape. But we also guide them, control them if needed." Jake's fists clenched. "So you're saying I'm your puppet?" Lyra's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Not puppet. Partner," she corrected. "Though I admit, most partners do not get a choice." Jake stepped closer, his frustration breaking through. "You could have asked," he said sharply. "I would have helped you, maybe if you just explained." For the first time, her expression softened. "You wouldn't have believed me," she said. "No human would. Until they feel it." Jake shook his head, pacing inside the cramped shed. Every part of him wanted to break whatever this bond was. But then he remembered the shadow on the rooftop, the glowing visor, the weapon. Whoever was hunting her was real, and they were dangerous. And now they were after him too. "How far can you control me?" he asked suddenly. Her eyes glinted in the dim light. "Far enough to make you fight. Far enough to make you run. But not far enough to make you betray yourself," she said. Jake frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means I can only push you where you already lean," she said. "If you truly want to protect me, I don't need to control you at all." Jake didn't know how to respond to that. He leaned against the wall opposite her, the cold dampness seeping through his jacket. Outside, the rain began to ease, but in the distance, faint mechanical hums drifted through the night air. Drones. Lyra's head snapped up at the sound. "They are close again," she whispered. Jake peeked through a crack in the shed wall. Small flying machines hovered between the market stalls, their red scanning lights sweeping over every surface. One of them paused, tilting slightly as if it had picked up a signal. Lyra pressed a hand to the side of her neck, wincing. "They have a tracker on me," she said. Her voice strained. Jake's stomach tightened. "Where?" She turned her head slightly, revealing a faint metallic bump just below her ear. "It's buried under the skin," she said quietly. "I've tried to remove it, but I can't reach it without blacking out." Jake exhaled slowly. "So they can find you anywhere?" "Yes," she said. "Unless I'm shielded. Or unless you take it out." Before Jake could answer, the shed door rattled violently, the wood splintered, and one of the tall hunters stepped inside, its visor glowing red in the dim light. It raised a weapon, aiming directly at Lyra. Without thinking, Jake moved in front of her. Her eyes flashed gold. And suddenly Jake's body reacted like it had. Trained for years, he grabbed a broken metal pipe from the ground and swung it upward, smashing into the hunter's wrist. The weapon clattered to the floor. The hunter snarled something in a language Jake didn't understand and lunged forward. Lyra's voice rang sharp in his mind duck. Jake dropped instantly, and the hunter's arm smashed into the wall where his head had been. Using the moment, Jake drove his shoulder into the alien's midsection, knocking it back toward the door, but before they could push it out, another shadow appeared behind it. Taller, heavier, with two glowing eyes instead of one. Jake's pulse pounded in his ears. "We can't win this fight." Lyra's voice said in his mind, urgent, "Then tell me where to run." Jake shouted aloud. Her eyes locked on his, and the world around him seemed to blur. He felt his feet moving, his hands grabbing her, his body weaving through gaps between the attackers as if he had memorized their moves. In less than 10 seconds, they were outside again, the night air sharp against his face. They didn't stop running until the market was far behind. Jake collapsed against a brick wall, panting hard. "You used me like a weapon back there," he said between breaths. "Yes," she said simply. "And you were good at it." He laughed once, dry and bitter. "Yeah, well, maybe next time, warn me before you turn me into your personal action hero." Lyra just looked at him with those glowing golden eyes. "Maybe," she said softly. "If there is a next time." The street was quiet now. But Jake knew it wouldn't last. The hunters didn't give up. If they had tracked Lyra to his apartment, and then the market, they would keep coming until they caught her. And now, he realized with a sinking feeling, they would want him too. Lyra leaned against the wall beside him, her small chest rising and falling quickly. She looked calm on the outside, but Jake could feel her fear pressing into his own mind. It was part of that strange link they shared. More than just movement now. He could feel the tension in her heartbeat, the way her muscles twitched as she listened for footsteps. "They won't stop," she whispered, her golden eyes scanning the alley. "They never stop once they have a target." Jake wiped rain from his face, his breath still heavy. "Then we need to get you somewhere safe," he said. "No," she replied quickly. "We need to get us somewhere safe." They moved again, staying in the shadows. The city's neon signs flickered overhead, reflecting in the wet pavement. Somewhere far off, a siren wailed. It was almost easy to pretend it was just another rainy night, until Jake noticed a flicker of movement on the rooftop above. He glanced up and froze. Two tall figures stood there, both wearing dark armor with glowing lines running along their arms. One of them was pointing in their direction. "Keep walking," Lyra murmured without looking up. "They're above us," Jake whispered back. "I know," she said, her voice steady. "But if you run now, they'll fire from above. And they never miss." They walked for another block, Jake's nerves tight as wire. Then, suddenly, the two hunters dropped down from the roof, landing silently in front of them. The first one stepped forward, its visor flaring bright red. "Return." "The unit," it said in a deep, distorted voice. Jake realized with a chill that they were talking about Lyra. "She's not a," he started. But the hunter raised a hand and a blinding flash burst from a device on its wrist. Jake stumbled back, half blinded, but before he could react, Lyra's voice rang in his head like a command. "Move left." His body obeyed instantly, just as a bolt of energy scorched the ground where he had been standing. Jake's vision cleared just in time to see the second hunter closing in from the side. Without thinking, he grabbed a loose brick from the ground and swung it upward, hitting the alien square in the helmet. The impact made a dull thud, but it only staggered the creature for a second. "Jake now!" Lyra's voice echoed in his mind. She darted forward, surprisingly fast for her size, and slid between the two hunters. Her small hand pressed to the side of the first hunter's neck, and Jake saw its visor flicker before the whole body went rigid. She had done something, he didn't know what, but the alien dropped to one knee, its weapon clattering to the street. The second hunter roared and lunged toward her. Jake stepped in without thinking, shoving it backward with all his strength. But the alien was too strong. It caught his arm and twisted it painfully. He cried out, but before it could throw him, Lyra's eyes flared gold again. Jake's free hand moved like lightning, grabbing the hunter's own sidearm and firing it into the creature's chest plate. The alien stumbled back, armor sparking, and Jake used the moment to pull Lyra behind him. They ran again, ducking into a narrow stairwell between two buildings. Jake's lungs burned, his legs heavy. When they finally stopped on the third-floor landing, he leaned against the wall, panting. "You can't keep doing that," he said. "Doing what?" she asked, her tone almost innocent. "Taking over my body, making me fight. I don't even know what I'm doing half the time." Lyra's expression didn't change. "If I don't, you'll be dead, and so will I," she said calmly. "Is that what you want?" Jake didn't answer. Instead, he peered out through a dirty window. Scanning the street below, the two hunters were gone. But that didn't mean they had given up. "They'll regroup," Lyra said softly. "And when they do, there will be more of them." Jake turned to her, frustration and curiosity mixing in his voice. "Why are they after you? What do they want?" For a moment, she didn't speak. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, "My people are rare and valuable. Some say priceless." Jake frowned. "Valuable how?" Her golden eyes met his. "They can sell me to governments, armies, even criminals. Anyone who wants control." It hit Jake then. Her ability to control him wasn't just some strange trick. It was a weapon, a living weapon. And the people chasing her wanted to own it. Before he could say anything more, a sharp metallic click echoed in the stairwell above. Both of them froze, slow. Heavy footsteps began to descend. Lyra's small hand gripped his wrist. "They've found us," she whispered. Jake felt the invisible strings tighten again, his muscles tensing for a fight he wasn't ready for. And as the shadow of another hunter appeared on the stairs, he knew there was no turning back now. The stairwell felt smaller with every step the hunter took. Its heavy boots hit the metal stairs with a slow, steady rhythm. Jake's grip tightened on the railing, his mind racing. Lyra's golden eyes locked on his, and once again, that invisible pull wrapped around him. "Wait for my signal," her voice echoed in his mind, calm but urgent. The shadow above grew larger. Jake could see the glow of the visor through the dim light. The hunter carried a long weapon, the tip humming with an unnatural energy. Jake had never seen anything like it, but instinct told him one hit would be enough to end them both. The hunter stopped one step above them. Its head tilted slightly, scanning them like they were just items to collect. "You are interfering with a retrieval operation," it said in a deep, metallic voice. Jake clenched his jaw. "She's not your property," he said. The hunter ignored him. "Unit 7X Lyra is classified as restricted technology. Return her and you may live." Before Jake could answer, Lyra stepped in front of him. Her chin lifted. "I am not your unit," she said, her small voice sharp as glass. The hunter didn't flinch. "You were born in containment, trained for control. Your existence is property under the Treaty of Captures." Lyra's hands curled into fists. "That treaty is broken," she said coldly, "and I am free." Jake didn't understand half of what they were talking about, but one thing was clear: Lyra wasn't just a runaway. She was something that powerful people believed belonged to them, and they would do anything to get her back. The hunter stepped forward. That was Lyra's signal. Jake's body moved like it had been preparing for this all his life. He grabbed the railing, swung himself up 2 steps, and slammed his shoulder into the hunter's midsection. The impact made the alien stumble, giving Lyra just enough time to press her palm against the back of its neck. Its visor flickered, and for a moment, Jake saw confusion in the alien's movements. But it didn't fall. This one was stronger. With a sudden surge, the hunter shoved Jake hard against the wall. Pain shot through his ribs, but before it could finish him, Lyra shouted in his mind, "Now!" Jake's hand shot forward, grabbing the alien's weapon. The hunter resisted, but Jake twisted it free and swung it upward. He didn't know how to use it, but somehow, his arms moved as if Lyra was guiding them. A burst of blue energy exploded from the weapon's tip, slamming into the hunter's chest plate and sending it crashing down the stairs. They didn't wait to see if it got back up. Lyra pulled him up another flight and into a dark hallway. Only when they reached an abandoned apartment did she finally stop. Jake leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "All right," he said between breaths. "You're going to tell me everything now." Lyra stood in the center of the room, her small frame lit by the faint glow of a broken neon sign outside. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she turned to him, her expression softer than he had ever seen. "My people, the Ilvari, are born with the gaze," she began. "The ability to connect with one living being, to share their mind, guide their actions, protect them, or control them." Jake folded his arms. "And that's what you've been doing to me." "Yes," she admitted, "but only to keep you alive." She began to pace slowly. "We are rare, Jake. Too rare for generations. Other species have hunted us, caged us, bred us like livestock to sell our abilities." Her voice grew tighter, her hands trembling slightly. "I was born in one of those cages. Raised to obey commands, taught to bond only when ordered." Jake's chest tightened. He had guessed she had been through something bad, but hearing it in her voice made it real. "I escaped 3 months ago," she continued. "I bonded with a smuggler to get off-world, but he sold me to the hunters when the bounty grew too high." Her golden eyes met his. "When I saw you, I didn't choose you to hurt you. I chose you because you didn't look at me like I was property." Jake felt a strange mix of anger and sympathy. He hated what had been done to her, but part of him still didn't like the idea of someone having that much control over him. "You said you can only bond with one person at a time," he said slowly. She nodded. "And breaking the bond could kill me." Jake ran a hand through his damp hair. "So I'm stuck with you," he said, trying to hide the fact that part of him didn't mind. Her lips curved into a faint, tired smile. "Yes, Jake. You're stuck with me." Before he could respond, a faint beeping sound filled the room. Lyra's expression shifted instantly from soft to alarmed. "They've activated the tracker again," she said. Jake's eyes dropped to the metallic bump at her neck. "I told you, it's under the skin," she said quickly. "I can't remove it myself, but you can." Jake's stomach tightened. "How?" Her eyes locked on his. "You'll have to cut it out." Jake stared at the small metallic bump. Under Lyra's skin, rainwater from his soaked jacket dripped onto the dusty floor between them. The faint beeping was steady, like a clock counting down. "They're already close," Lyra said, her voice tense but steady. "If we don't move now, it won't matter if you cut it out or not." Jake hesitated. The thought of cutting into someone's skin, especially someone as small and fragile looking. As Lyra twisted his stomach, but before he could argue, her eyes flashed gold. "We move first," she ordered. "Then we find a place safe enough to try." They slipped out of the abandoned apartment and into the narrow streets. The rain had turned into a thin mist. Neon lights reflected off puddles, painting the wet ground in pink and blue. Jake stayed close to Lyra, his eyes darting between doorways and rooftops. Every shadow felt like it was watching them. Then, in the distance, he saw it. A hovering drone, scanning the street with a sweeping red beam. It turned sharply, locking on them. "They've got us," Jake muttered. Lyra didn't reply. She just grabbed his wrist and pulled him into a sprint. They weaved through side alleys, past overflowing trash bins and flickering street lamps. Jake's lungs burned, his heart pounding against his ribs. The drone's mechanical hum grew louder behind them. From somewhere ahead, 2 more drones descended, cutting off the exit. "They're hurting us," Jake realized. Lyra skidded too. A stop, scanning the walls around them. "There," she said, pointing to a rusted fire escape above. Jake crouched, letting her step onto his back. She grabbed the lowest rung and pulled herself up with surprising speed. Jake followed, the metal groaning under their combined weight. They climbed to the rooftop, but the moment Jake pulled himself over the ledge, a sharp crack split the air. The wall beside his head exploded into sparks. "Sniper!" he shouted, ducking low, across the rooftop. One of the hunters was crouched behind a vent, a long rifle in its hands. Lyra's golden eyes locked on his. "Left now." Jake rolled just as another shot tore through where he had been, without thinking. He charged forward. His legs moved faster than they should have, guided by her unseen control. He grabbed a loose metal panel from the rooftop and hurled it at the sniper. The shot missed, the hunter ducked, and Jake used the moment to grab Lyra's hand. Pulling her toward the next building, they leapt across the narrow gap. Jake's boots slipped on the wet metal surface, but Lyra steadied him with a surprisingly strong grip. They ran toward the far side of the roof, only to find two more hunters climbing up from the fire escape below. Jake cursed under his breath. "They're cutting us off everywhere." Lyra scanned the street below. "Their cargo train yard," she said, pointing to a dark stretch of tracks. The trains were lined up, huge metal beasts ready to move. "Out of the city, if we get on one before it leaves, we can be out of the scanner's range," she said. Jake didn't like the idea, but it was the only one they had. They scrambled down the far side of the building, dropping into a narrow alley. The air smelled of oil and wet metal as they slipped through a fence into the train yard. Engines rumbled in the distance. Workers shouted orders, their voices drowned out by the hiss of steam and the clank of metal. "Which one?" Jake asked. "That one," Lyra said, pointing to a long freight train already beginning to move. Jake's muscles ached from the run, but he forced himself to push harder. They sprinted alongside the train, the wheels clattering against the tracks. Jake grabbed the edge of a ladder and pulled himself up, then reached down for Lyra. Her small hand fit into his perfectly as he hauled her up. They ducked inside an empty cargo car just as the train picked up speed. For the first time in what felt like hours, there was silence. Jake leaned against the cold wall, breathing heavily. "You think we lost them?" he asked. Lyra shook her head. "No. But we bought time." Her voice dropped lower. "Jake, if we don't remove the tracker now, they'll just keep finding us." Jake looked around the dim cargo space. The only light came from the slits in the side of the car, casting thin beams across the floor. He spotted an old toolbox in the corner. "This won't be pretty," he warned, pulling it open. Inside were rusted pliers, a dull knife, and a few scraps of cloth. Lyra sat cross-legged in front of him, tilting her head to expose her neck. "I trust you," she said softly. Jake swallowed hard. "You shouldn't." But he gripped the knife anyway, wiping it on his sleeve. The train rattled under them as he pressed the blade gently against her skin. She didn't flinch. Jake made a small cut, just enough to see the glint of metal. Lyra's breathing stayed steady, but he could feel her pain in his own chest through their bond. He reached in with the pliers, gripping the tiny device. With one quick pull, it came free. A small red light still blinking. Jake dropped it onto the floor and smashed it under his boot. Lyra's golden eyes met his, a faint smile touching her lips, for the first time in months. "They can't find me," she whispered. Jake leaned back, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Good," he said, "because I think they're going to be very angry when they realize it." Far behind them, faint in the distance, a low, mechanical roar rose above the sound of the train. It was the hunters, and they weren't done yet. Asterisk. The train thundered through the night. Cold air rushed through the gaps in the metal walls, carrying the scent of rain and steel. Jake sat with his back against the wall, watching Lyra as she leaned into the corner, her small frame wrapped in her arms. She looked exhausted, but her golden eyes still held that unshakable focus. "They'll follow the train," Jake said quietly. Lyra nodded without looking at him. "Yes. But now they have to search each car, and that buys us minutes." Her voice was calm, but Jake could feel her unease through the bond. It was like an invisible thread pulling her emotions into his chest. "How far can you feel me?" Jake asked. Suddenly, her eyes flicked toward him. "As far as I want." "Until the bond breaks," she said. Jake frowned. And if it breaks? She hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line. If the bond is broken before I'm ready, my heart will stop, she admitted. Jake's jaw tightened. So it's basically my life tied to yours, and your life tied to mine. Yes, she said softly. That's exactly it. Before he could respond, the train gave a sudden jolt. The sound of heavy boots clanging against the roof echoed above them. Jake froze. They're here, he whispered. Lyra's eyes narrowed. They're moving toward this car. She pushed herself up, her small hands gripping the side of the wall as she steadied herself. They'll kill you first to weaken me, she said bluntly. Jake let out a humorless laugh. Thanks for the reassurance. I'm not reassuring you, she replied. Coldly, I'm telling you the truth so you don't hesitate. The sound above grew louder. 3 sets of boots now, moving in unison. Jake's hand went to the alien rifle they had taken earlier. It felt heavy, unfamiliar, but he held it tight. The roof hatch above them rattled. Then, with a sharp metallic screech, it swung open. The first hunter dropped through, landing in a crouch. Its visor swept the car, locking onto Lyra instantly. Jake raised the rifle, but before he could fire, Lyra's voice hit his mind like a command. Wait. The hunter took a step forward. Jake could feel the tension in her thoughts. She wasn't sure they could win this fight. The second and third hunters dropped in behind the first. 3 against 2, Jake swallowed hard. Any brilliant plans? He muttered. Yes, she said, her golden eyes locking onto his. We break the bond. Jake's stomach dropped. What? You just told me that would kill you. Not if I do it my way, she said quickly. If I push every ounce of power I have into you for a short time, you'll be free and stronger. But I won't be able to link again. The hunters began to spread out, slowly closing the distance. Jake's hands tightened on the rifle. Why would you do that? He demanded. Because if they catch me, they'll use me to control you, and then you'll be their weapon, she said, her voice hard. I won't let that happen. Before Jake could argue, she stepped forward, her small hand pressing against his chest. Her eyes burned brighter than he had ever seen. The world around him blurred. He felt a surge of heat in his veins, his muscles tightening, his heartbeat thundering like it was trying to break free. Then suddenly, the thread that had always been there in his mind snapped. Jake stumbled back, gasping. The constant weight of her presence was gone. He looked at her. She seemed smaller somehow, her glow dimmer. Now fight, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The first hunter lunged at him, but Jake's body moved with a speed that shocked even him. He sidestepped, slamming the butt of the rifle into its visor, cracking the glass. The second swung a blade-like weapon, but Jake ducked low, sweeping its legs out from under it. The third charged from the side. Jake turned, firing a burst of blue energy straight into its chest, sending it crashing into the wall. The car shook violently as the train sped around a curve. Jake used the motion, ramming one hunter into the side door and kicking it open. Wind roared into the car. The alien struggled, grabbing at Jake's arm. He shoved hard, sending it tumbling into the darkness below. The second hunter tried to recover, but Jake fired again, the blast throwing it back through the open hatch. Only the cracked visored one remained. It lunged, catching Jake by the throat. He struggled against its grip, his vision dimming, until Lyra, with the last of her strength, darted forward and drove the broken knife they'd used on the tracker straight into the alien's side. The grip on Jake's throat loosened, and he hurled the creature out the open door. Silence filled the car, except for the roar of the wind. Jake turned to Lyra. She was swaying on her feet. Her golden eyes flickered weakly. You're free now, she murmured, before her legs gave out. Jake caught her, kneeling down. Her skin was colder than before, her breathing shallow. You're not dying, he said firmly. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. That depends on whether you still want me around. Jake shook his head. You're stuck with me, remember? Her eyes closed, and for the first time since he'd met her, There was no golden glow. The train kept rushing forward into the night, and Jake knew the final fight wasn't over yet. The train roared through the night like a metal beast. Wind howled through the open door of the cargo car, carrying with it the scent of wet steel and smoke. Jake sat on the cold floor with Lyra resting against his chest. Her breathing was faint but steady. The golden glow in her eyes was gone, replaced by her almost human softness. He kept glancing at the door, knowing the hunters wouldn't stop. Breaking the bond might have hidden them from her trackers, but it didn't erase the bounty on her head, and now, without her control guiding his movements, he'd have to fight on his own. "You're warm," she murmured weakly, her voice barely audible over the rattling train. Jake tightened his grip around her. "Good," he said, "because you're freezing." She gave the faintest smile, then closed her eyes again. Minutes passed. The steady rhythm of the train almost made him believe they might make it to the next city unnoticed, but then, faint at first, he heard it. A low mechanical hum. It grew louder, sharper, until he could feel it in his chest. Jake's heart sank. "They found us," he whispered. A shadow moved outside the open door. Then, in one smooth motion, a hunter landed inside the car. This one was different. Its armor was darker, its visor a glowing white instead of red. It didn't speak. It just drew two curved blades that shimmered in the dim light. Jake gently set Lyra down, then stood. His body ached from the last fight. But there was no time to think about that. Without the bond, he felt slower, heavier, but also more himself. And he wasn't about to let them take her. The hunter moved first, fast and precise. Jake ducked under the first swing, barely avoiding. The second, he countered with a punch to its midsection. But the blow bounced off the armor. The hunter's knee came up hard into his ribs, knocking the wind out of him. He stumbled back, vision blurring. Through the haze, he saw Lyra's eyes flutter open. "Jake," she whispered, her voice urgent but weak. The hunter stepped toward her, raising a blade. Something inside Jake snapped with a burst of adrenaline. He grabbed a length of broken chain from the floor and swung it with all his strength. It wrapped around the hunter's wrist, pulling the blade wide. Jake yanked hard, dragging the alien toward him. Before it could recover, he drove his shoulder into its chest, sending them both crashing into the wall. The hunter slammed its helmeted head into Jake's face, stars exploding in his vision. But Jake didn't let go. He twisted the chain again, wrapping it around the alien's neck joint. The hunter struggled, clawing at the metal. Jake pulled harder, the sound of straining armor filling the car. Finally, with a sharp metallic crack, the visor shattered, sparks bursting out. The hunter collapsed to the floor. Motionless, Jake staggered back, breathing hard. His vision swam, his arms shaking from the effort. But when he looked at Lyra, she was smiling faintly. "You didn't need me," she whispered. He knelt beside her, shaking his head. "I needed you to get this far," he said. "I still do." Before she could answer, a second shadow fell into the car. Another hunter, this one carrying a long spear-like weapon. Jake's legs screamed in protest, but he forced himself up again. The alien lunged, the spear's tip sparking as it cut through the air. Jake sidestepped, grabbing the shaft with both hands. The hunter was strong, but Jake used its momentum, twisting and shoving it toward the open door. The train lurched violently as it hit a curve. The alien lost its footing for just a second, enough for Jake to drive the butt of the spear into its midsection and send it tumbling out into the darkness. Silence returned. Jake dropped the weapon, falling to his knees beside Lyra again. Her small hand reached up weakly, touching his cheek. "I broke the bond. But I think maybe it's still there," she said softly. Jake covered her hand with his. "Yeah," he said. "I think so too." For the rest of the ride, he stayed awake, holding her close. When the train finally slowed near a quiet industrial district, he carried her out in his arms. The air was damp and cold, but the streets were empty. They found an old maintenance shed near the tracks, small but sheltered from the wind. Jake set her down on a pile of blankets he found inside. "What now?" she asked, her voice still weak. Jake sat beside her, looking out at the dark city skyline. "Now we disappear," he said. "Find somewhere no one will look for us. And maybe, if you want, we stay there." Her golden eyes glimmered faintly again. "You'd stay with me? Even without the bond?" Jake met her gaze, no hesitation in his voice. "Yeah, Lyra. Not because I have to, but because I choose to." She leaned her head against his shoulder, a small smile on her lips. "Then from now on," she whispered, "you control me." Jake chuckled softly, wrapping his arm around her. Somewhere far away, he knew the hunters were still out there. But for the first time since she had appeared in his kitchen, Jake felt like they had already won.